All right, everybody. Good morning. Happy Saturday. Hopefully, everybody's weekend is off to a great start. We have another episode of Let It Rip for y'all. It has been a spicy week. And so we are going to get into all of the latest. But before we get into all of that, a couple of things right off the top. As you all are trickling in, as you all are joining us, go ahead and chime in. Let us know where you're tuning in from, where exactly you're already with the technical issues. Okay, seems to be good. All right, let us know where you're tuning in from, what questions you have along the way. We're going to be hitting a lot of different topics. We're going to be hitting a lot of different specific things, and so a lot of this, I'm very keenly interested since I'm the one that's steering the ship today. I'm interested in hearing from you guys, the viewing audience, because a lot has been said, and myself included. I've said a lot about what the popular perspective was about these topics that we've been hitting. So I want to hear from you guys what you how you've handled over the last week and all of that. And if you are catching this on the replay, same thing goes for you as well. We still want to hear from you. We do pay attention to the comment section along the way. So, gentlemen, this week there has been well, I mean, in general, a crazy amount happening in the news. We could pick any number of topics to talk about this week, but last week it seems as though once again the internet has fallen on its head. A week ago, the internet blew up with this whole the first of multiple controversies centering around the Olympics. And so as we get the ball rolling on this thing, and as we get to talking about this, I would like if you guys would entertain it for me to recap the events of last week for everybody, because there's a lot of partial information, a lot of different posts and takes and things like that I think it would help us in addressing everything that happened last week by starting off with the basics. This is what happened. This is where we're at. Sound good?
Yep.
All right. So last week was the opening ceremony for the Olympics, and there was a big display. Now it's being held in France. That's important here. There was this big number done in drag that lit the world on fire, because it used a lot of imagery that was taken as parody or satire of the Last Supper. And that was the big rallying cry. Did these guys just mock our religion and mock the Last Supper and all of that? And so the responses have been everything from that France owes the West an apology, to our God will not be mocked, to disgusting name calling for the performers of the actual performance. So that being said, world goes on fire. Social media is ablaze. The Olympic Committee released a statement stating that it was not the Last Supper, but it was actually a rendition of the Feast of Dionysus, which, for those of you that don't know, the Olympics, they're Greek tradition. They were born out of Greece. Dionysus was the goddess of fertility, prosperity, those sorts of things. And your mileage may vary on where exactly the pin got put. You know what I mean? For some folks, the main issue was the whole thing was done in drag. For other people, it was that they thought it was the Last Supper. All of those kinds of things. But they release a statement, says, and then several reputable art historians also came forward and said, "Hey, here's the pinpoint imagery in this entire performance that signifies that this was the a portrayal of the feast of Dionysus." Now, we'll get into, as that portion of it came out, what the continued response was even after that. But for now, that's basically it in a nutshell. So if you've missed this entire, actually, I have one more point to make. So for the last several Olympics, one of the growing trends is that the Olympics are actually a ratings loser for network television. It's been between that and the hassle and cost on hosting cities. It's actually like a big behind the scenes issue of the future of Olympic events, because to give you an idea, the only bids that came in for the next Olympic events were the United States and, again, France. Whereas that used to be a really big deal to get the Olympics in your area. So when the ratings came in, it showed that most of the people who were reacting to reactions, not having watched the actual performance itself. So we're getting part of the story from part of the story from part of the story for a lot of these reactions. So now that everybody is caught up, I just think that for something like this, I think even what I just said could be enough to, oh, well, that changed the entire paradigm of how I thought about this thing. Because if all you heard was Last Supper, Last Supper, Last Supper, and there's nothing else to counterbalance against that, I mean, the supercomputer in your pocket would like a word and a little site called Google, but that's a horse of a different color. But at least now it's been addressed. So we ask all so now that all of that is out on the table, my first question for y'all: why so everybody loses their collective minds when this happens? Rico, I'll start with you. What do you make of all of this?
Yeah, I don't know what I make of all this. I got a lot of mixed feelings about it. Hold on real quick because I'm hearing myself echo. All right, I got a lot of mixed feelings about it. One, I think I'll start by saying, if you know the history of the Olympics, you know it's pagan backgrounds anyway. I think it was like performances for Zeus or something like that.
Mhm.
So on one hand, you gotta expect it. You know, worldly people gonna do worldly things, and pagan is ultimately anti-Christian. You know, goes against the things that we believe. So we shouldn't be surprised if we see something that goes against what we believe. On the flip side to that, though, I think people do have a place to speak on it and talk about it, because if we don't, then people won't be educated, right? As Christians, we are not partaking evil, but call it out, right? And so I think there's a piece to that as well. But then the other side of it is how the Olympics kind of responded to it. Just it's own up to it. The guy did say, I think his name is Thomas Jolly, the designer for that opening scene, the guy who did choreograph the opening scene. He said he did take some inspiration from that painting, the painting of the Last Supper, but then he also took inspiration from a bunch of other stuff. And I was watching this show on YouTube called LED Live that does a lot of reactions to this kind of stuff, and they did a really good, thorough reaction to it. And some of the things that they brought up lets me know that this is a spiritual war. Regardless of of what of how people may think about that. So, for example, the Dionysus or whatever, his father was Zeus, his mother was Female or Shemale or something like that, right? And so, if you know about Zeus, about how he's the god of lightning and the whole nine, Zeus, the Bible speaks on how we saw Satan fall down like lightning or whatever, right? And then this Zeus character supposedly impregnated this mortal woman, female or whatever. Or I don't know how to pronounce her name, but he impregnated her. So God impregnated human, very similar to the story of the Holy Spirit, right? Impregnated Mary, and then I guess Zeus' wife got jealous that he was cheating with her and killed her. And then somehow her son or one of the other guys brought her back to life. And so now she's like a god, female. And then Dionysus, he's the god of wine. And so at the Last Supper, what were they taking? Communion, the blood of Jesus, the wine, right? And then in Revelation, it talks about wine. And so there's so many different similarities to Jesus story or the Christian story with these pagan roots, which again is not nothing new. That is something that always happened. Satan himself does mock and imitate God and what God does. And so I think there is a place to have conversations about these kind of things, but at the same time, don't be surprised when evil do evil and people do things that are against, God's way.
And what do you got?
Yeah, I had to take some time and kind of do my own research, my and really look over it and try to figure out how um how Christians could mistake these things for each other and how it could look like a mockery. I think really what I saw was the freeze frame shot that they put up of the opening ceremony, and then they put a picture of the Last Supper, next to that shot, and it kind of is, and I don't know if it was, well, who knows, but it seemed like it was, on purpose that that was done that way, because when you put those two shots, still shots, next to each other, um, there is similarity, in the look of the shot, but and Rico has said that the guy took some inspiration. The article that I read said he said it was not his inspiration, that his inspiration was because they are from, it's a Greek tradition, that it was derived from the festival of Dionysus, and that was the goal, and like Rico said, when you compare the two events, they do involve a communal table, they do involve wine and food, and, and people coming together eating at a table, which, in ancient times, that would not have been an odd scene anywhere, whether you're a Christian, Greek, Roman, whatever, to come together at a table and have wine and eat food. But the festival, is about diversity. It's about partying, libation. You know, the when you look at the outfits, it was a party, whereas the Last Supper was not a party; it was a meal. And it's almost like, because I was looking at it, it's like, man, jump when whoever was the first to jump to this conclusion. The Bible says that whoever speaks first will be believed, right? And so a lot of times somebody throws it out there, and then everybody else catches on to it. Whereas if somebody were threw out that this was the festival of Dionysus first, then I think the reaction would have been different. But whoever was the first to throw out, oh, look at this mockery. And I like what you said, Rico. I'm like, why would people be surprised that um that the world would be doing what the world is doing? It's it's actually almost strange that you're like, oh, wait a minute, what are they doing? Like, but they're being who they are, you know.
Mhm.
And in the culture that we're talking about, we're talking about France. We're talking about the Olympics. We're talking about, a place where, I believe in France, man, they got new beaches. They got it's a different place, right? And so you would expect the Olympics to represent the people who are hosting it in some way, shape, or form. There'd be some type of festival, there'd be some type of party, there'd be some type of imprint of the people hosting it. I think that the struggle that I had was before you could even look at it, all you got was blasphemy, mockery, blah blah blah. People taking to social media, putting their, their sermons together on social media, their posts, their blogs, and these blogs are, y'all know those those big posts that are just on and on and on, and like, wow, you got to put the long post alert on them because this is about to be, you know a long post. That was my big thing. And so when I started looking, up at looking these things up, and you kind of pointed out some of this, Rico, the symbol of wine, is a part of the festival of Dionysus.
Mhm.
Even the theme of sacrifice, both Dionysus and Christ are associated with the theme of sacrifice. The communal meals is another thing that is, but these are like on the surface, right?
Mhm.
These are not like, the symbol of ritual, the role of ritual and symbolism are interwoven into both of these, you know. Um, but that would be just taking things at at the very surface level, you know. And most people, and I think you said this, Joe, didn't see the entire presentation. They just saw the
Mhm.
still shot.
Yeah.
And when you see that still shot, come on now, you look at him like, "Whoa, what did they just? What is
Yep.
this? What kind of?"
Yep.
And it really is based off of this still shot, not the fact that, hey, this is a different culture, a different place, a different set of values, you know. And if they're talking about diversity, now this is something that I think we'll get into as we have this conversation. If they're talking about diversity, then if you were to give them the benefit of the doubt, it wouldn't be directed towards any specific religions, or, it's about anybody and everybody having expression, right?
Yeah.
Which is kind of the way of our world, right? I don't know, where you guys live, it might be a little bit different, but in Colorado is a very expressive place. It is
Mhm.
a very open place. It is very diverse. There's there that's more so what, we see here in Colorado is this idea of people expressing themselves in different ways and being, open about this and open about that. And so I think, when my first reaction was, wow, this is all I have to go on. And there's a temptation to go with that narrative that hit my social media, that hit my Facebook, that hit my Instagram, that hit my TikTok, that hit, oh, this is a travesty. Look at what's going on. And there's a couple other things in the Olympics that have the same feel to it. That it's like, oh, if you just take this shot, no backstory, it's like, oh man, this is wrong, right? And so um, that was my initial reaction. That's what hit me, in the very beginning. And so the offense is because of how it was portrayed to me. It really was. It was, this is the way it was shown to me. And it's like, okay, if that's what's going on, you know, then there's a part that's like, whoa, what is happening here? So,
Hey, real quick, I just want to say, I want to clear something up. The guy who did the festival or whatever, who did the opening scene, right? He did come out and say he did. It had nothing to do with the Last Supper, but the producers of the Olympics, in their response, said, and I'm reading this. Said for the festivity segment, Thomas Jolly took inspiration from Leonardo da Vinci's famous painting to create the setting. Producers said in the statement, clearly there was never an intention to show disrespect towards any religious group or belief. Jolly is not the first artist to make a reference to what is a world famous work of art. From Andy Warhol to The Simpsons, many have done it before him.
Yep.
So basically, he did that setup was meant to look like that painting.
Well, like you said,
So
the Olympic producer said that, but when he was questioned, when Thomas Jolly was questioned, he said no, that was not his
right.
inspiration.
Also, one thing that needs to be taken into consideration, and this goes into a larger topic, is when we look at art, there is very little in the way of new art. It is all inspired. And so when we're talking about the famous painting of the Last Supper in comparison to the famous painting of the Feast of Dionysus, yeah, there absolutely is inspiration because it's an artistic expression, because it is a piece of art created at a time compared to another piece of art that was also created at the same point in time. Rico, you said something interesting that caught my attention, and you are you are meticulous oftentimes with your words. So I'm curious to get everybody's 2 cents on this. This whole idea of having conversation about it, right? You went there. We have a spot to have conversation about it, but the last thing that I saw was actual conversation, actual engagement that was breaking this thing down and talking about it and discussing it and analyzing it or anything else like that. Instead, it was jumping to the defense of Christianity, all in the name of our God will not be mocked. So my question that then becomes, when we look at these kinds of reactions and hot takes and platforms, and everybody's got their soapbox to jump up onto and all this kind of stuff, is there a line, is there a difference between having a conversation about it and jumping on social media and saying our God will not be mocked? I ask that. It sounds like I'm being tongue in cheek. It sounds like I'm being so incredibly sarcastic. And if you gentlemen could hear some of my takes originally to the outcry of nonsense that I watched, trust me, you guys would understand that this is me being reserved. This is me trying to be charitable about the entire thing. But the reality is, when we talk about these things, when we have these kinds of conversations, it attracts people from all perspectives, right? And that's the gimmick. Let it rip. Get in here. Share your 2 cents. So for some people, the answer is no. That's exactly what conversation looks like, that we do need to put down these pagan thoughts, that we do need to put them in their place. So the question becomes then, is it right for us to be offended in and having all of that? And what does it look like to actually have conversation about this whole thing?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. And I believe, Anthony, correct me if I'm wrong, we were supposed to do a show very similar to that topic last week here on Let It Rip about Christians and social media. And I'll be honest, Joe, a lot of it is gossip. Like, I'm just gonna put it out there. A lot of what we do on social media is gossip. A lot of it is following the trends. It's making sure that you can get the algorithm to show your stuff to as many people as possible. So if there's gossip or something going on, people are gonna talk about it. And so I would say no, it's not the same thing. And two, there is a line that can be crossed, and you got to be, you got to be careful not to move into the gossip realm. But I will, to play devil's advocate, if you will, here we are talking about it right now because the algorithm is high and because it's that's the thing that to talk about right now. However, I still stand by there is a place for the conversation to happen. So, like for example, if me and my family actually watch the Olympics, because we don't, I would definitely take that as an opportunity to say, okay, kids, look what's going on here. This is that, and this is this, and this. I'll take that as an opportunity to explain it. And then if I'm in a group of um setting like we are here now, I'm gonna take the opportunity to share, my thoughts on it and what I got to say. If I'm around atheists, or if I'm, like, to be honest, that was actually something I was wishing that we could do here is get
Mhm.
somebody who agrees, who thinks different than us, because that's when I think real conversation happens, right? When you got people able to express, so like for example, me and my granddad has been having conversations back and forth about this whole political season we're in right now. And my granddad is an elderly gentleman, and so he was one of the first people to go to integrated schools, and he has a distrust of Caucasian people because of some of the negative, nasty stuff was done to him. So in his mind, he's like, well, I'm voting Democrat, and I'm not going to vote for President Trump because of blah, 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 blah. And I asked him a simple question. I'm like, well, what is it about the Democrat policies that you're actually going to vote for? Did you look at the other policies? Did you look at the other side? Or are you just going off an assumption that Trump is racist and this and that? Do you even really know any of this stuff? He had no answer for me. And Granddad, forgive me for calling you out like that. But the point that I'm making is, it's one thing to gossip, and then it's another thing to actually hear other people's sides, take other things into account, and then make a decision based off of that. And so I agree with you 100%, Joe, that a lot of what we see is just people gossiping and people following the trend.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. James, oh, go ahead, Joe. You were getting ready to.
No, I was just gonna throw it to you. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, good morning, Pastor Logan. Acknowledging the chat. Yeah. Um, this has been ringing in my mind. James 1:19. Be slow to speak, quick to hear, slow to wrath. Verse 20. Because the wrath of man does not produce the righteousness of God. I mean, if there ever was a perfect scenario for that verse to rest into, and there's plenty of them, but I think in this particular situation, this is um, so appropriate. Be slow to speak, quick to hear, slow to wrath, for the wrath of man does not produce the righteousness of God. And I think um, because, like you said, Rico, there's not dialogue, there's dictation. There's a difference between dialogue and a dictation. Dictation is I just talk and people write down what I say. Dialogue is people communicating. There's back and forth. Hey, what does this look like to you? Hey, what does this look like to you? And I think, what you described, in your situation was, what we hope for is to actually have a conversation about it. Like you said, Joe, there's not conversation. There's just people taking to their soapbox and just going in and I and see for me, I don't think for us we are following the algorithm, but this is something important to the people that we talk to and that we're around. And
Yep.
so because this is something important to the people that we're talking to and we're around, because I don't think we would do it if it wasn't. You know what I mean? I sit with Joe and it's like, hey, that's going on. Like, I don't. It's not really something that I'm going to talk about. But this particular thing, it feels like the people around us are having questions about it. There's people
Yep.
around us that we know personally that are taking to social media and posting things. You're like, whoa, hey, that's not even what that is.
Yeah, and
Okay,
I just meant to say that
no,
I
no,
meant to
no.
say
I'm
because the algorithm
right,
is doing what it do, it's
right.
Oh
on
yeah.
our radar now. Right.
Yeah.
That's all I
Yeah.
meant to say.
Well, and you're and because of your personal conversations, I think this actually personally affects all of us. I have people that I respect that have a very different position on this, you
Yeah.
know, And I'm thinking, wait a minute, this person's pretty educated, pretty knowledgeable. Did they do the research on this and put these things side by side and discern whether or not, you know, uh, these things are what they are, and then decide, okay, well, based on this, this is my approach to my objection to this. Because people can have their objection to whether they know what it, so let's say, we know it is the festival or the feast of Dionysus. Okay, what's your objection to that? You can still have your objection to that. You still have the right to have an opinion about that. But I think when the opinion is based off of, and I had to go and look this up because I was like, is this a case of confirmation bias, right? Is this a case of, based upon my belief and my perspective, I believe that this is happening, especially because all I got was the still shots of these two things next to each other, you know? And when like you were talking about, Joe, you look at the original painting, Da Vinci's painting is older than the painting of the Festival of Dionysus when you look at them, so art, there is, inspiration taken from each other. And so when we're talking about art, let's just talk about music. I mean, even music, there's no new chords. There's no new everybody's taking from everybody in when they're doing art. And so you could look at this situation and say, okay, yeah, there's going to be some similarities because even when you look at the original